government has abandoned you. They have ordered you to die. GI, do not trust them.
The resurgence of Hanoi Hannah's audio on TikTok has sparked renewed interest in her role during the Vietnam War. Her real name,
Trịnh Thị Ngọ, Trịnh Thị Ngọ.
Ching Ti Ngo. She was known as Hanoi Hannah. She was a radio broadcaster who delivered English language propaganda aimed at US troops in Vietnam. She broadcast every day for nearly 20 years, from 1965 to 1973. Her scripts were not improvised, they were written by the North Vietnamese Army's Psychological Warfare Unit. They were designed to lower US troop morale. She would read lists of US casualties and prisoners of war, the ones published in the US papers. She would read articles about the anti-war protests in America. They would play popular US rock music and blues, and she would consistently accuse US imperial leaders of abandoning their troops. Most of what Hanoi Hannah said was not a lie. She was reading from official US military reports. The broadcasts weren't lies, they were weaponized truth, which made them so much more effective. They weren't actually propaganda. They were undoing American propaganda. They were being delivered to men in a jungle thousands of miles from home, watching their friends die for unclear reasons. US troops were told they were liberators, but what they saw when they arrived, what they participated in, was torture and mass civilian death, destruction of villages, and strategic confusion. So hearing Hannah validate their doubts was incredibly destabilizing. She would say things like, "Your girlfriend is with somebody else. Your government has forgotten you. It would be wiser to deflect." It was speaking directly to a deep sense of abandonment that these soldiers already felt. And many Vietnamese veterans reported having nightmares about her voice. Some said her words haunted them more than the combat itself, because the real propaganda was internal. American soldiers drafted to Vietnam were mostly working class, often non-white, poorly educated, poorly trained, definitely not trained for jungle and guerrilla warfare, and not really understanding what they were fighting for. They were told that they were defending freedom, but when they got there, nobody wanted them to free them. The villagers saw them as occupiers, and nobody really knew what winning meant. Also, they would rotate 12-month tours, which disrupted any group cohesion within the units. So fighting this war had no meaning. And the propaganda from their own government and military command and the American media was way more contradictory than anything Hanoi Hannah had said. American military indoctrination is designed to first strip away your individual identity. Recruits wear the same uniform, follow the same routines, and are subjected to strict discipline. This creates unity and obedience. American boys are socialized into military masculinity long before enlistment. Critical thinking is discouraged. Instead, the focus is on absolute loyalty and following orders without hesitation. Military culture leans heavily on appeals to nationalism, patriotism, and traditional masculinity. Soldiers were told they were defending freedom against the threat of communism. This binary framing deliberately discourages critical thinking. Questioning the war or its motives is made to feel like treason or betrayal. Training materials, commanders, and even public rhetoric repeatedly invoked gendered shame. Be a man. Don't let your brothers down. America needs you. This discouraged any reflection on the war's ethics and pushed American troops to internalize the war effort as their personal responsibility, rugged individualism. It's only you alone, the hero, can save us from the dreaded threat of socialism. Enemy soldiers or civilians were rarely referred to by their real names or national identities. Instead, derogatory slang was common. Gooks, Charlie, Slopes, VC. This is not casual racism by a soldier. It is systemic, imperial, functional racism as propaganda. If you think he's just a gook, you don't mind killing him. While some soldiers did question the war and many became disillusioned, the military had strict mechanisms for shutting down any dissent. Officers were trained to detect and neutralize any subversive attitudes. Speaking out could result in court-martial, solitary confinement, or even a dishonorable discharge. In extreme cases, tensions led to violence within units. Fragging, which is the deliberate killing of the commanding officer by their own soldiers, was a real phenomenon during the Vietnam War. The Vietnamese approach to psychological warfare was simple. Know your enemy. North Vietnamese intelligence studied US troop culture. They read Stars and Stripes, they read American newspapers, they read GI letters, and they knew most troops were conscripts. Most were either black or working class white. Most of them did not understand the core purpose of their mission, and many of them felt abandoned and lied to before enlistment. So the Vietnamese didn't need to lie or fabricate propaganda. They just needed to highlight the plot holes in the American version of the story, of which there are so many. I will get into all of that in part 2, which should be in the playlist, unless you're incredibly early, in which case, thank you.